History comes alive tonight on This Week in NASCAR.
Tim Fox Mercury wins in record time.
Johnny Allison throws the block. A checkered flag for car number 43.
With the Hall of Fame near completion, Winston Kelly tells us all about the building inside and out.
I just can't wait till this place is open.
Plus, get a sneak peek at some of the Hall's memorabilia. And listen in as media members debate the inaugural class.
I credit Ralph Seagraves of RJ Reynolds with transforming NASCAR.
This Week in NASCAR goes old school right now. This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Geico. And hi, everybody. Glad you're with us. Now, of course, this show is always fun, but I'm really excited about this. Even though we didn't have any racing this past weekend, Winston Kelly is here, the executive director of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He and I have been bumping into each other for over 20 years now. But Winston, you are so qualified and such a great guy to fly the banner for the Hall of Fame. Tell us about where we are in the process and when we can expect it to be open. I was down there at the Panthers playoff game. We won't talk about that, the one they lost, but I was like, wow, it's real, it's going to happen.
Well, we're on schedule. I mean, the two most asked questions I've gotten in the past 2.5 years is who's going to get in when you're going to open? And we'll talk later about who's going to get in. Don't know that yet, but we're on schedule to open in May of 2010. Everything's going very nicely. The building's supposed to be completely dried in on the Hall of Fame side in June of this year. Exhibits start going in December, and that'll be built out. We're supposed to get the building and on schedule to do that in mid-April to start our soft opening activities, to do our grand opening and our initial induction ceremonies in May of 2010.
Well, we have a ton of questions for you, Winston, but right now let's take a little bit closer look at the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is about 9 miles from where we are.
What if you were in charge of something truly important, something enduring, something timeless? An entity so popular that it unifies millions of people, brings happiness to their lives. A world where smoke, ritual, and fanaticism reigns. For some, it is a lifestyle, and it has its own nation. It's a sport. A sport that is big, bold, and simply down to the bone marrow thrilling. So let's say you've been asked to create a hub for the sport, a place that encompasses its size, honors its past, prepares for its future, and all the while entertains and educates its nation, the NASCAR Nation. Where would you put it? This was the question NASCAR faced, and its final decision was only natural. The sport's licensing and broadcast headquarters, its Hall of Fame, its new office tower, all will make their home in the heart of stock car racing, the thriving city of Charlotte, North Carolina. Modern facilities destined to become the pride of the motorsports industry. NASCAR Plaza.
One of the reasons that Charlotte, North Carolina was chosen as the home of the NASCAR Hall of Fame is that our industry is based here. And what a perfect place to preserve the history of NASCAR and bring it to life for future generations for years to come. So the idea of the NASCAR Hall of Fame being here, where 82% of our teams are based, that the NASCAR Plaza will be here, that the NASCAR Media Group, all of these opportunities to unite the industry and bring them together to develop this content and information. You know, one of the secrets of our sport really is our drivers and teams and the access they provide. And so if we can bring that content to life and then distribute that through all of the media partners and partnerships we have, it's going to be a special place.
I think it's very, 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 very important to have part of this where the history of the sport is shown to people.
One thing that I have been frustrated about is that my brother recently passed away, And he and I are the only two left living, I think, that know who all is in all the pictures and know who did what to who. And then we have the collection of the old photographs.
Who made the scrapbook?
My mother.
They ran 60-some races back in those days, back in the late 50s. And they didn't have these fleets of cars. Most of them had only one or two cars, isn't that right? Maybe one.
You can go back through the early days of racing and how dangerous it was at one time to how safe it is today. It's remarkable how far the sport's come, and as slow as the cars were running at that time to the speed that they're running today. So, you know, and where it's going from here, God only knows.
Soon, the concept grew more expansive, including NASCAR's Charlotte operations, television production, a broadcast news hub, even a NASCAR sports grill and shopping. NASCAR Plaza will sparkle in the heart of Center City, transforming Charlotte's skyline and beckoning millions of visitors. NASCAR Plaza will make an instant statement. A gleaming steel ribbon will circle the complex like a super speedway of the future. Pulsing color lights will race around the ribbon, darting through city blocks to create a virtual road course through the Carolina night.
Well, Winston, you and I may be biased, but I think it's in the absolute right place. Tell the fans what they can expect. We know there will be inductees. I am assuming there'll be some cool race cars from the past, but what else will fans be able to see?
You know, one of the things I tell folks is we're more than a Hall of Fame, and we're certainly more than a museum. We're also an entertainment attraction, and we've got a number of theatrical opportunities there. We've got a 270-plus seat theater that'll serve as an orientation theater, but also we can show Sprint Cup Series races and be the premier place for people to watch races. Then you've got a thing we call Glory Road. It starts out flat and banks up to 33 degrees. It gives folks a chance to see what is it like at 24 degrees at Lowe's Motor Speedway or 33 degrees at Talladega. One of the things we hear so much from people that do tours is how steep the banking is, and they're amazed by that. We can put 18 cars on that bank and theme them different places. There's, of course, a Hall of Honor where the inductees will be enshrined. There's an area we call the Race Week Experience. It's the most highly interactive area, and it explains what the race teams go through, and in the entire industry. They'll be able to see interactive opportunities like a pit crew challenge. You and I see these guys change 4 tires, put in 18 gallons of fuel, and make adjustments to the car in 11.5 to 13 seconds. The average person couldn't take off 5 lug nuts in that time. So they'll be able to do that, and there's a kids element there as well to see how the cars are inspected. There's going to be a race simulator in there that'll have a force feedback wheel where you can feel that bump going into turn 1 in Daytona or going into turn 4 at South Boston Speedway. An area where they can be Steve Burns or they can be Mike Joy or Barney Hall, where they see how the broadcasts are done and then be an announcer. And then there's a historical element that takes people through the formation of NASCAR, the early years back at the Streamline Hotel, how it evolved, how it changed as R.J. Reynolds got involved, the impact of the 1979 Daytona 500, the evolution to Nextel and then Sprint coming in, and how the Sprint chase for the championship has evolved. And then a very artifact-rich area that has different themes that explains whether it's champions or the decades in NASCAR, and it's going to be very interactive, but also where we can change it frequently, so if people come back multiple times, they'll always see different things.
We have to wait till May of 2010?
That's it.
All right. Well, when we come back on this special edition of This Week in NASCAR, Winston will fill us in on the items, some of the items you'll see in the Hall of Fame, including that famous number 43. Plus, is Dale Earnhardt worthy of being inducted into the first class? A debate on who should be the first 5 coming up before we're done.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by the auto parts experts at AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. And by Z-Max, performance you can feel.
And there's the president of the Michael Waltrip Fan Club here on this Hall of Fame edition of This Week in NASCAR. Glad you're back with us. We're joined by Winston Kelly, the executive director of the Hall, and the monkey was part of the props. We love props here.
Well, that's Jocko Flacco, who, as you know, actually drove with in 7 different races with Tim Flock, and we're working on a neat concept that will tie our kids' element into Jocko Flacco. But Jocko actually did race in some races, some neat stories there that we'll talk about. We've got one of Lloyd Moore's helmets, who his teammate Bill Rexford, who won the 1950 championship, also wore back in 1950. We've got one of Dale Earnhardt's helmets. It's his second helmet that he ran a theme in 1995. He ran the silver anniversary Winston helmet. This is from the 1996 Olympic helmet. We've also got a Win the Net from 1971 that Richard Petty used, and according to Richie Petty, who has loaned us this item, said that Elizabeth, his mother, actually made this, and you remember in 1970 is when Richard had that bad accident that they added the Win the Nets.
So she made, fabricated the Win. How about
Elizabeth
that?
actually made that. We've also got a current seat, and one of the things people will be able to do is sit in the old bench seats. You remember, they just sat in a regular bench seat, and then they'll be able to see how it's graduated up to these seats that actually engulf the drivers. To make it personal, just like Jocko, we've got one of Davey Allison's bow and arrows that Liz Allison was able to give us, because one of the things that we want to do is show the personal side. And then, we've got some car parts that I want to share with you.
Good Lord, Winston, how much does this weigh?
Probably weighs about 75 pounds. That's an oil tank that's from out of the front of the car that one of the teams that we will leave unnamed, that they added a little bit of weight to the left front of the car because it's always good to pull the left front down.
Yes.
And the NASCAR officials got to looking at the lines that went out of there, and they didn't go anywhere. So Jerry Cook, one of our good friends who's been a great help to us out at NASCAR R&D, has gotten some parts that may have been a part of the creative engineering, we'll say.
Yes, creative. I had a radio that Dick Beatty, the former series director, handed me that weighed about 35 pounds. Hey, you mentioned Richard Petty. I know you've got some special items from the King.
We do, and one other thing that we have from his dad and from Richie Petty is a NASCAR license that Lee Petty got 2 days before the June 1949, the first strictly stock race here in Charlotte. But we've got Richard's 1967 Plymouth that he drove to 27 wins in that year. It actually debuted in 1966 and won 9 races. And a quick story about that, when I asked Richard about what car would he most like us to have in the Hall of Fame, and he kept hemming and hawing, and he finally said, "You need to tell us what you need to tell your story, and we'll make it happen."
Wow.
What more can you ask for?
Yeah, that same car won, as you said, 27 races, 10 in a row. I read an article, too, about Raymond Parks. He's a terrific gentleman, 94 years old, and you've got some very special items procured from him. Yeah, he and his wife have announced that they're going to donate their trophy collection to us. And Mr. Parks was a part of the founding members of NASCAR. He was actually there in 1947. The very first meeting at the Streamline Hotel. His cars won the first race in NASCAR competition in 1948. He has that trophy. The first championship in 1948 and the first strictly stock championship in 1949. And those are all a part of the memorabilia that he's donating to us. And that's equivalent to having the 1903 World Series trophy, I'd say, and the 1933 NFL championship trophy. So that was real nice of the Parks to donate those to us. All right, a lot more coming up. And coming up next specifically, we'll get the details on the entire NASCAR Plaza, including the office tower and TV studios, and still to come, an explanation of the criteria and the voting process for selecting the Hall of Fame inductees. We'll be right back. This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Geico, and a special Hall of Fame edition of This Week in NASCAR. So glad you're with us. Well, as Winston Kelly's been telling us, the Hall of Fame is in Uptown, Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's more than just a Hall of Fame. It's an entire plaza.
This was a tremendous opportunity to bring all of those pieces together in one place, under one roof, merge together all of our operations of our Charlotte licensing team, NASCAR Images, NASCAR Digital Entertainment, and really create one initiative that can help take the sport to the next level and really achieve the vision that Brian France had to create the NASCAR Media Group and take advantage of really the next step of the consolidation of our media rights and really create one united vision for the NASCAR Media Group.
The $150 million development will also transform Charlotte into a leader of television production. NASCAR's production and creative services company will bring its world-class talent and state-of-the-art equipment to the 19-story, 390,000 square foot NASCAR Plaza.
It's an affirmation by NASCAR that what we're doing here in Charlotte is important. It's an integral part of the sport. And by merging the West Coast office with our business, it just recommits NASCAR to the fact that Charlotte will be the hub and the center of all the media activity for the sport moving forward as an organization.
Now, the people behind the largest TV compound in sports will have the ultimate facility to stretch their creative minds.
Our television partners bring it all home.
We're going to make it better for the fans.
People want it, and they want all they can get. We got hours and hours of television. You can turn on TV about any time and find motor racing somewhere in NASCAR.
Charlotte is also the home of NASCAR's licensing department, allowing the media operations to drive NASCAR's business of e-commerce and merchandising.
Licensees play a valuable role getting good merchandise to let our fans wear their favorite drivers and teams. If you took all the sponsors out as an example and all the cars were blank, it wouldn't even be natural.
NASCAR, as we all know, is a sponsorship and licensing machine.
It seems to be, if you name it, it comes now in NASCAR.
NASCAR's Automotive Aftermarket Division enables automotive product suppliers the ability to reach NASCAR's large consumer fan base.
You look at the number of Fortune 100 executives that are going to be in the garage area today entertaining customers, and you won't find that anywhere else in America, any day, any place.
Performance mufflers from Aero Exhaust are going to make your car sound cool and make it run great.
NASCAR's Brand and Consumer Marketing Research Division and Industry Relations are also strategically based in Charlotte, along with NASCAR's philanthropic arm, the NASCAR Foundation.
The foundation is really here to help our driver charities make the biggest impact possible.
I love that impact, that I can make a small impact and put a smile on a child's face.
That's the NASCAR Foundation, Rock!
It's all of those things that go into making NASCAR what it is week in and week out. It helps define who we are, and we're proud of it.
Winston, I think I'm all jacked up after watching that. Now, you said the hall opens in May of 2010, but isn't it true that some part of the plaza will be open this year?
Yeah, there's more on this 5.5 acres than just the NASCAR Hall of Fame. There's the NASCAR Plaza that you heard Paul Brooks talk about that actually is set to open here in the next few weeks. There's a parking garage, over 1,000 spaces that we'll share with the NASCAR Plaza, as well as a ballroom, 40,000 usable square feet that we can seat over 2,500 people banquet style and over 5,000 people theater style. So it's quite the complex, and I've got to give kudos to the public-private partnership between the City of Charlotte, Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, Bank of America, Wachovia, and so many more that were able to put this together along with NASCAR and Loft Properties who are building the office tower.
Winston, it seems by looking at that impressive structure that NASCAR is moving a lot of its business. Now, forever, we should say this, forever they've been headquartered in Daytona Beach, Florida, where Bill France Sr. got things going, but a lot of their business is going to be here.
Yeah, they are the licensing area that we talked about in the NASCAR Media Group. There's also 2 studios that you heard Jay Abraham talk about that's on the Stonewall Street side that can do major production studio work. And there'll be a NASCAR newsroom over on the Hall of Fame side. There'll be a small television studio that we hope you guys and Speed will come use a lot, as well as a radio studio for MRN, PRN, Sirius Satellite, and any local radio station as well. So there's a tremendous number of things going on in the complex there there built around the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Winston, what surprises have you encountered during this process? To me, it's amazing for somebody to envision a project this big.
You know, I think the biggest thing is while I knew it was popular and I knew there was interest in it, how much interest we have had, whether it's from people who wanted to loan us things, donate us things, come to work for us, sell things, just be a part of the process. So it's not that there was interest, it's the volume of people and the number of different entities, which it's been a real good problem to have because we've had a lot of great interest, and I'm not surprised by it, but the overall cooperation. There's so many different elements. The one thing that makes me the most uncomfortable in this is when folks say, you know, here's the guy who's responsible for building the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Not true. There are so many people in the city and our organization, the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, NASCAR, the construction team, the exhibit design team, the architects, and when everybody comes together and looks at what we need to do, and there's differing perspectives, when a decision is made, it's what's best for the project, not what's best from my individual perspective. And that teamwork has been just outstanding. Not surprising, but with so many different constituencies, that's been one of the most rewarding parts.
Well, it is a huge project and it looks fantastic. Well, after this, the NASCAR Hall of Fame has a unique way for fans to become a permanent part of the Hall. Winston will explain. And who will be the first 5 to get inducted into the Hall? Will a crew chief be one of those 5? How about Richard Petty's crew chief Dale Inman or innovator Smokey Yunick? We'll be right back. Glad you're back with us for a special edition, a Hall of Fame edition of This Week in NASCAR. And as we said, Winston has been so kind to come down and share some time with us, and he has brought even more props. Now, Winston, I've been accused of being a brick on this show at times, but tell us about these bricks in particular.
You know, this is a concept that folks came up with actually before we won the Hall of Fame, that fans can actually be a part of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, where they can purchase either a 4x8 or an 8x8 brick and have it placed in front of the NASCAR Hall of Fame by going to NASCARHall.com/brick, and they can put any kind of message on it they want to. It doesn't have to be a racing memory. It can be, but we had one couple that did a memory of their son who passed away that Ryan Newman reminds them.
Sure enough. We think they were down at
they were at
Atlanta.
Daytona. They were down at Daytona, and we brought them down there, and Ryan Newman was kind enough to meet with them. But you can also get a replica of your favorite driver. We've got over 40 competitors, current and past, drivers like Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty, who've competed, Fireball Roberts, Junior Johnson, Ned Jarrett, as well as current competitors Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Tony Stewart, and just about any one of the drivers that you can get their likeness by purchasing an 8x8 or 4x8 brick, and you can purchase a replica brick to go in your shop, your home, your office. And we've had some neat stories that have come out of it. You can go online, and there's an interactive program out there now that people can enter some message that they'd like others to see to generate ideas just by going to NASCARHall.com.
Now, Winston, you talked about this venture being public-private. Is this a way to help raise funds for the Hall, or just something you did to have fun for the fans?
It's a little of both. The original concept came up to help pay back some of the bank loans as a funding opportunity, but NASCAR is very fan-based, and we're very connected to the fans and the fans to the drivers. So that's where we worked with NASCAR and our advisory board to put this concept together. And the drivers and the teams, that you can purchase a team logo as well as many of the track logos. So it's really been a community effort, both NASCAR community and Charlotte community.
We need to have a This Week in NASCAR logo on our brick.
Well, we can do that, and I think you probably needs to be one there for Karen Goins Burns, I'm sure somewhere. It's a great gift idea.
That's right. That's coming up, isn't it? You talked about how you can be a part of this. Here's specifically how to do it. 3 different bricks to choose from, as you said. Go to NASCARHall.com brick.
That's it.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll find out how long you have to be retired before being considered for the Hall of Fame. And Junior Johnson won 50 races as a driver, 139 as an owner. Should he be one of the first 5 to get inducted? We'll find out. This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Geico. a replica of Jocko Flacco, who, as Winston said, actually was in a race car with Tim Flock, and a real monkey, not one like that. Winston, this is the part of the show I'm really excited to find out about the criteria. How does one become an inductee or enshrined into the NASCAR Hall of Fame?
Well, NASCAR intentionally left it very broad because they wanted anybody who had made major accomplishments or contributions to the sport to be eligible, had to compete for at least 10 years if you're a driver or a competitor, and be retired for 3 years. So virtually anybody who's made any kind of major accomplishment or major contribution to the sport is eligible. The question is who and when.
And let's talk about now the first class. We're going to have a great debate coming up, but only 5 inductees into that first class.
You know, I really like the process that NASCAR came up with on this, that you're going to have 25 people that are nominated by a 20-person panel, and then a larger group of 47 plus a fan vote narrows that down to 5. The first 25 will be identified in the June time frame, and then the fan vote and the next part of the process, it includes media, retired drivers, owners, and crew chiefs are involved in the process that will narrow it down to 5 people that'll be announced in the October time frame.
And Winston, what's fun about this, it always sparks great debate, whether it's the Baseball Hall of Fame or the Football Hall of Fame, is who should get in, who deserves, who's been overlooked. It's just fun for the fans.
Well, yeah, and the story I tell people is that day I was talking to Richard about what car goes in. I said, Richard, I need to look at it like we might have 2 of your cars in there. He kind of looked at me and I said, we've got one we want on Glory Road, and I've got to assume that there's a good possibility that you'd get in the first year. Big surprise. And he said, well, how's the process going to work? And I said, well, NASCAR's coming up with that. Richard would not put himself in the first class.
Really?
And I said, you know, Richard, I don't disagree with you about a lot, especially racing related. You've forgotten more than I know. But I don't know how you're not in the first class. And he said he would just do it chronologically. My point in mentioning that is there's not a right or a wrong way. He would start with the Bill France Seniors, the Lee Pettys, the Raymond Parks, and, you know, work up to his era. Others would do it different ways. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of debate, not just in year 1 and year 2. I think when we get to year 8 and 9, there's going to be people get in year 8 that some folks think ought to get in the next year, and vice versa. And it's going to keep that debate going on. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And Winston, let's touch on briefly, but I think it's important, the fans are involved in the vote as well.
Yeah, and we're working on the process there with NASCAR. NASCARHall.com will be involved, as well as NASCAR.com, where people can vote online, and working on what the paper balloting process will be. But fans will be able to be that 48th vote. So fans will be able to submit a vote between July and September, and the top 5 vote getters from the fans will have, that'll be 1 vote for those top 5, and we're working on a system to make sure, you know, that it's got the integrity that needs to have so people can't stuff the ballot box, but it's the only professional sport that the fans can be involved. And I really applaud NASCAR for including the fans, because they realize that's the backbone of the sport.
No question about it. It's time now for our Picture of the Week, and a reminder from Kurt Busch's amazing performance at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Go to the Twins show page on speedtv.com. Use the link to email us. Put 234 laps led on the subject line. Be sure to include your shipping address in the email, and 1 entry only, please. Up next, the debate continues on who should be included in the inaugural Hall of Fame class. Wendell Scott was the first African-American to win a NASCAR race in 1963, and Bill France Jr. came up with a point system that's used today. Should they be included? We'll be right back. Our thanks to Winston Kelley, the Executive Director of the Hall of Fame, for joining us. And now it's our privilege to be joined by Mike Harris, who is the senior auto racing writer for the Associated Press. He has 40 years in the business of covering racing. And, of course, the voice of NASCAR on Fox, Mike Joy. And welcome to both of you. Mike, I want to ask both of you guys this, but Mike, what is actually your first memory or your first experience in racing? Because you've been around a long time.
Well, in racing, doing public address at a little quarter-mile track in Massachusetts starting in 1970 when I was in college. I'd been working in a Firestone store making $3 an hour busting tires, and they were going to pay me $25 to talk about racing for a night to the fans. And it was terrific.
And there's a shot of you with Jerry Punch back in 1986.
Oh, gosh.
Haven't changed a bit.
Wow, the logo there was bigger than the checks.
Yeah.
I promise you that we got for doing that.
I remember that.
A lot of fun.
And Mike, what about you? You said you've been in NASCAR for 30 years, and your first experience.
Well, my first auto racing experience, I mean, don't start at the top or anything, 1970 Indianapolis 500, and I've covered every one since, and my first NASCAR race was the old Winston Western 500 in Riverside, California, 1980, January 1980, when they used to end the season in January and restart in February.
Well, there's nothing scientific, gentlemen, to this list. We're going to throw out 10 folks in just a minute, but first, a reminder, the criteria. And what do you guys think about initially, Mike, Joy, how they've done this?
I think it's very fair. Very fair and even-minded. I think there are a lot of people who've contributed greatly to this sport, though, that we may not get to for a decade or so because it is so wide open.
All right, and now, as promised, we're going to throw out 10 names, 10 legends, and discuss Bill France Sr., called the father of NASCAR. He spearheaded NASCAR from its beginning and directed it to its present role as the world's largest stock car racing organization. He organized the meeting at the Streamline Hotel in Daytona in December of 1947 and founded NASCAR in 1948. Bill France Sr. also built Daytona and the Talladega Superspeedway in Alabama. Bill France Jr. took over NASCAR from his dad in 1972. His ascension to NASCAR's leadership role, likely the most important event in the sanctioning body's history. As a rulemaker, promoter, ambassador, and salesman, he set the standard by which all other forms of motorsports are measured. Well, how about Richard Petty, the king of stock car racing? 200 wins. He has 95 wins ahead of the next closest competitor. Petty scored 7 championships, tied with Dale Earnhardt for the most all time. The king is the all-time leader in Daytona 500 wins with 7. Richard Petty, also a great ambassador for the sport in the 70s and 80s, helping fuel the sport's amazing growth. David Pearson, the Silver Fox, second on the all-time wins list with 105. Pearson captured 3 titles and was a 1976 Daytona 500 winner. Pearson would have likely earned more championships and race wins if he had raced full-time. 27 years of racing, he only raced full-time in 8 of those. Cale Yarborough became the first driver to win 3 straight championships when he did it in 1976, 77, and 78. Also the runner-up in the title 3 other times. In his career, Cale racked up 83 wins, which ranks 5th all-time. Dale Earnhardt was nicknamed Ironhead and the Intimidator. Earnhardt tied with Richard Petty for most championships at 7. He scored 76 wins in his 25-year career, including the 1998 Daytona 500. Earnhardt is the all-time leader in race wins at Daytona with 34. And Bobby Allison netted 84 race wins and was a 1983 NASCAR champ. The 84 race wins tied for 3rd all-time with Darrell Waltrip. Allison also finished 2nd in the championship 5 times throughout the 70s and 80s, a 3-time winner also of the Daytona 500. And Darrell Waltrip took home 3 championships with legendary driver-owner Junior Johnson. 84 race wins tie him with Bobby Allison for 3rd all-time. Jaws, as he was known, broke through and ended a career-long drought at Daytona by winning the 1989 Daytona 500. Lee Petty was the first driver to win 3 NASCAR championships. He was the winner of the first Daytona 500 back in 1959. Lee Petty retired in 1964 with 54 wins, #1 all-time until his son Richard broke that record. He is currently ranked 9th all-time. He also helped develop race car safety innovations like roll bars and window nets. Junior Johnson is a NASCAR legend, both as a driver and a car owner. Junior won 50 races behind the wheel in the 1960 Daytona 500. As an owner, his cars won 139 times and claimed 6 championships with drivers Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip. The car owner victory total 3rd all-time behind Petty Enterprises and Hendrick Motorsports. Well, guys, how in the world do we pick 5?
That's a darn good question. That's a very good list, obviously, but you can include other people on that list as well. And I guess that's why they decided to go with a list of 25 for the, to pick from in the first class. But you would not go wrong picking just about any of those drivers right there. I mean, they all should be. And my feeling, and Mike and I had talked about this earlier, is that maybe the first class should have been a little bit bigger because we have so many people to get in, so many people who are going to be in at some point, obviously. But that's the criteria they set. That's what we're going to have to work with.
Who are we missing, Mike?
I think the list you just gave is light on the sport's early stars. Tim Flock, most popular driver, two-time champion, 39 wins, 38 poles in the top 15 on both those lists. Buck Baker, two-time champion, 13th all-time on the win list, 10th on the pole list. Ned Jarrett, two-time champion, 13th all-time poles, 10th all-time wins, tied with Junior Johnson, and a great broadcasting career that Ned had after he hung up his helmet.
Mike, you bring up a great point. If we're going to talk contributions, of course, DW, who we work with, has the dual role of being a great driver and a broadcaster. Same with Ned and Benny Parsons.
Benny as well. Yep. And two fellows from outside the cockpit that I'd love to see get in this Hall of Fame while I'm a part of this sport. H. Clay Earls, who founded Martinsville Speedway and just ran that lovingly, passed it on to his grandson, Clay Campbell. Hot dog's still $2 up there, by the way. And Ken Squire, who, with Bill France Sr., founded Motor Racing Network Radio, set the style for how races are presented on radio to this day, and then convinced CBS to cover stock car racing and advance the sport. I think we'd be about 15 years behind in this sport's development today were it not for Ken Squire.
And Steve, I think this may sound a little self-serving, but in baseball they have a writer's wing to the Hall of Fame, and to me that's something that should be addressed, because if you're going to go five a year in this Hall of Fame, it's going to be many years until any of the media people get involved in the voting. And you've got some people like Chris Economaki and Tom Higgins and Frank Blanc from the New York Times and Macklemore and Clyde Bolton, people like that who did so much for this sport, especially in the early years of it, who are not going to get recognized. So and Blaise Britt,
like T. Taylor Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many people. So it's going to take a long time before we get all the people who should be in the Hall of Fame, but obviously gives us a lot of people to choose from.
And don't forget Barney Hall.
Absolutely.
A lock.
All right. When we return on This Week at NASCAR Special Edition, Cale Yarborough was the first to win 3 straight titles. Lee Petty earned 54 wins and 3 championships. Fireball Roberts, a superstar with 33 wins before he passed away. Are they worthy of the first Hall of Fame class? We'll find out. This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Geico. Hope you're enjoying our NASCAR Hall of Fame Special Edition. In just a moment, we'll ask Mike Harris and Mike Joy for their Fab Five for the inaugural class for the Hall of Fame. But first, let's check in with Dave Despain.
Well, Steve, Big Bill France is a no-brainer to me. Without him, there would be no NASCAR, never mind a Hall of Fame, and we panel members would all have to have real jobs. So that'll be a unanimous first ballot pick. I would propose similar induction by acclamation for the King and the Intimidator, not just for the 7 titles each, but for defining the sport in their respective eras. Richard Petty in the days when NASCAR was a 55-race-a-year, largely southeastern activity, and championships didn't matter that much, and Dale Earnhardt when the sport began to get national attention and needed a national hero. By the way, Jeff Gordon is next in the defining driver line, but he has to wait because my last 2 picks are taken. One goes to Smokey Yunick. In that golden era when innovation was fundamental, not just to NASCAR, but to all of racing, Smokey out-innovated them all. I miss innovation in racing, and I really miss all the genius that Smokey inspired. Finally, though not a household name, I credit Ralph Seagraves of R.J. Reynolds with transforming NASCAR. In the early 70s, he took millions of dollars that Winston Cigarettes could no longer spend on TV advertising and created the Winston Cup. That deal marked the birth of modern-day sports marketing. That paved the way for the rest of corporate America to unleash a flood of NASCAR sponsorship dollars. In turn, those dollars paid for weekly national TV coverage of stock car racing. None of that would have happened without Seagraves. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Of course, panel views may differ, as I suspect we're about to find out.
Now that's a lock, Dave Despain. And interesting, Junior Johnson helped bring Ralph Seagraves in. So this we go down a lot of different paths. All right, Mike, what do you think? Who's your Fab Five?
See, the thing is that you could pick so many people. I mean, Dave's picks are great, and Ralph Seagraves is somebody that not everybody's going to think about right away. But if it hadn't been for Ralph, we wouldn't be where we are today. My pick is also kind of along Dave's lines. Involves a lot of history, and I think that this sport is made up of historical things. It's a generation-to-generation sport. Therefore, my picks, probably not everybody else's, I think that both Bill Sr. and Bill Jr. should be in the first class because Bill Sr. started it, Bill Jr. ran with it and brought it to where it is today. I like to see Lee Petty and Richard Petty both go in. Father and son who did so much for this sport, who won so many races, who won so many championships, and did incredible things to get the sport to where it is now too. And then the driver who I think is, everybody agrees is the most popular, you know, and the most important in the history of the sport, other than Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and that's my five.
Okay, Mike Joyce, sell us on your list.
Well, he said everybody agrees, and I disagree. Just a little bit. Bill France Sr., without Bill France Sr., we wouldn't need to be having this discussion. He's a lock. I think there needs to be a synergy among people within a class, and I'm going to create an arbitrary rule of one family member per year.
All right.
So that puts Senior in, and it holds Bill Jr. back to the second year. Richard Petty, David Pearson, forever intertwined. 1-2 finishes, 1-2 on every competition list NASCAR has for wins, for poles, everything but starts. They are 1 and 2. Junior Johnson, for the same reason Dave Despain likes Ralph Seagraves. R.J. Reynolds said, we'd like to sponsor your race car. He said no, and he brought Seagraves and Reynolds to France to sponsor the entire series. Never mind, Junior had 50 wins as a driver and 6 championships as an owner. So Junior's in, and because of that synergy thing, I want to hold Dale Earnhardt back and put him in with his good fishing buddy, Bill France Jr. in year number 2 to give Winston something to sell tickets to in the second year. So I'm in trouble for my 5th pick. And I'm between Tim Flock, Buck Baker. It'd be Lee Petty, except for the one per family per year rule.
Yes.
I'm going with Ned Jarrett, and it's because everybody on my list has made a lifetime contribution to this sport, not just behind the rule book or behind the wheel, but their entire life helps us to define this sport. And with his 2 championships, his 50 victories, 35 poles, and his broadcast career, and just his career as a gentleman around the sport, I'm going to put Ned Jarrett in year 1.
And he retired in the prime of his career, I think 35 or 36 years old.
36 years old. Who knows what he would have won if he'd kept on racing.
All right, boys, I'm going to throw my 5 in for the inaugural class. I agree. Bill France Sr. Mike, I have to disagree with the family rule. I've got to put both Frances in the first class. I think Richard Petty, it's inconceivable to have an inaugural class without Richard Petty. And I agree, Mike, with David Pearson. I think they defined, their rivalry really helped catapult this sport. So we've got both Frances, Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, and again, David Pearson. And I think we could make a strong case for any one of our classes. And that's, as Winston Kelly and I talked about, that's what makes this so much fun.
Well, it's going to be great. And the thing is, it would be wonderful in my mind if we could have had a top 10 the first year, just to get this thing starting, get going, because there are so many names to pick from. But if we've got to stick to 5, the debate is going to rage. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'll tell you one thing about Earnhardt. If you leave him out, you're going to get a whole lot more notice than if you put him in.
Good marketing. I like that. I think Winston Kelly is still watching this. All right, we'll take a break and wrap things up here on this Hall of Fame edition, a special edition of This Week in NASCAR. Thanks for being with us here on Speed.
This Week in NASCAR is presented by Geico, where 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Final segment with Mike Harris from the Associated Press and Mike Joy from NASCAR on Fox. And guys, in the commercial, I was thinking, what took it so long to get here? I'm glad it is, but it took a long time.
Well, we're glad it's here, and it sparks such passionate debate. Nobody should be disappointed if their favorite driver isn't in the first class or even the second class. Hey, I think Ron Santos should be in the Hall of Fame. Well, it's a different Hall of Fame, but he's not there yet.
There have been other Halls of Fame over the years in motorsports, and they've been widely scattered and involved a lot of different disciplines in the sport. And this one's going to focus on NASCAR, and that's a great thing because NASCAR is the big gorilla right now, you know, and going to be for a long time, I think.
Jim Rice did make it this year, though.
Attaboy.
Be with us next Monday night at 8 o'clock.